Okay, I don't know. It acted like it wasn't working. Coming to you live from a vaudeville theater in Tehachapi, right? Okay. The I don't know. When I originally started this, I thought it was going to be like two, maybe three episodes. I don't know if I have enough for 10 or however many thumbnails I had, but I still ended up with this. This current document is at 22 pages, so we'll see how far we get before I, get bored or whatever. Um, I know if you watch like shows like 90 Day Fiance or something, these people must be meeting online and thinking they're a great match and ending up almost all of them are train wrecks. Their relationships are arguably about, green cards and such, and they get into some stuff, about, if their families have different religions or whatever, but mostly, I don't know, the compatibility is, I guess, just on paper doesn't work the same as chemistry might in person or something. But and this episode isn't going to be even so much about the dating apps. Again, it's kind of focusing on discussions from a dating app employee that, like all dating apps, I think are probably overpaid. And well, I think if you work knowingly for an unethical company, then you are probably an unethical person. So there's that. But in this case, I don't know how many of the apps are skewed or biased against religious people. I would assume that most of the employees may still identify as religious, but I'm guessing that a lot more of them probably identify as agnostic or atheist. Obviously, there are some that are religion based more, but I don't know if you have to belong to a specific religion to be part of them, or if you just get swiped away a lot if they're one thing and you're another, like Protestant and Catholic or Jewish and Catholic or something like that. I don't know. I haven't really done a ton of research on that because I was not really interested in giving money to any of these dating apps. So I never really bothered to use them. And again, watching these programs, it hasn't, I mean, yeah, you're more likely to meet more people, but it doesn't seem like you're meeting more people that you're necessarily compatible with. So I don't know how that's supposed to work out. And I try not to get too much into politics on this channel. This video will still contain elements of that because, well, mostly it was going to be about religion, but then we had some new additions to the content. So once again, I have new stuff at the beginning and then older stuff toward the end that I just hadn't gotten to in the previous episodes because they've all ran way too long. And as always, I'll say at the beginning of this one that I hope it's not too long, that people will click on it. But yeah, if you know about these allegations about this industry and you're not, being a whistleblower and leaving it to other people, like I said, the Matt Walsh video from about a month ago, I thought was pretty good, not totally comprehensive. The first 10 minutes was, all about how these dating sites have been losing money, but clearly not enough because, again, obviously a lot of people are willing to go into it if they're only looking for, hookups instead of relationships or marriage versus situationships, which I'm not even entirely sure what that word means, except you keep going back for the booty call, even though they're a toxic individual or whatever. So yeah, I don't know what's equal, morals or lack thereof in an employee, regardless of whether or not they're worried about losing their job to other factors like technology. Anyone with a real compass might have quit already, but then they'd be out of a job sooner, right? And they don't want to do that because they like their paycheck, even though, whether or not they believe in capitalism or even like men, they still want to use the apps to meet men. They still want to date for free dinners rather than spend their own money, even though they have more money than a lot of the men they meet, blah, blah, blah. I've covered all this and previous episodes. So I'm trying not to be too redundant, but we still need to touch the bases here if somebody's just clicking on fresh, curious why they should listen to me. I don't know. But yeah, men should know that they can have, 3 dates with a younger and less wealthy woman and have possibly a better time for the same or even less amount of money that they have to shell out. But that's another side issue that we're not really going to go into here. Herein, we mostly want to address, again, the hypocrisy in their religious stance, as, again, not necessarily relates directly to these dating sites, because the dating sites will just say, well, that's, what they do on their personal time is their thing or whatever, if it's drugs and alcohol or casual affairs or whatever. But the dating sites are not interested in whether or not you find love or get married. They're interested in cashing a check and going to the bank. And as far as, again, people like Matt Walsh have said, and why none of them has brought a class action lawsuit, I don't know. Why none of them is holding the feet to the fire of these companies, I don't know. I'm just a little channel that has content that might be educational or entertaining or however you want to frame it. So in the last episode, I talked about financial aspects like marriage, division of assets, that kind of thing. Again, we didn't go as deep as we could have. We were mostly just reading comments of people giving their opinions because I thought that was interesting enough. And so, yeah, we're here going to skip aspects of things like Planned Parenthood and, some total promiscuous woman behavior and all that kind of thing. But yeah, a hunky billionaire will get a younger woman easier than, he needs to worry about putting up with an older woman who's been around the block too many times or whatever. Kind of there's kind of but these gals are still hypergamous enough that they think that they should all be able to get that hunky billionaire and all that kind of thing. But they're not money grubbing. They're not gold diggers that, they insist that, but they're also not communists. They swear, even though, again, whether or not they're actually unwitting shills for the Chinese party is definitely an argument we could make, especially since, again, to not get too political, the mayor of Arcadia, though, just being indicted for being an actual espionage suspect for said country. Sorry. And this one, there was stuff about the ex-husband. They said about a year ago that they were tired of talking about the ex-husband, but they're still talking about the ex-husband. But we're not going to get too much into that, although there was a religious aspect to some of that. But again, this just reaffirms that, like most of the women in this category of age and demographic, whatever, they have bad taste in men, and then they blame it all on all men. Like Alex Grace just did 2 more videos about this, each one better than the last or longer than the last or whatever. Always seems to coincide with what I'm about to talk about is some of what he talks about, so that's nice, because it gets it kind of fresh in my head. But I've been saying this for 10 years already before I ever saw his videos. And these women, I don't know if they just drive the men away, not in every case, just because they're annoying or whatever, but it's all the other men's fault now, and meanwhile, all the smart, sane men have already run off and married somebody else in the meantime. So obviously the number goes down the older you get, even if you're not just out to find a billionaire. But then we get into a whole tangle about mental health and stuff, that they put out a video about, I don't know if they didn't cite the source, but it might have been some of the Matt Walsh video, or it might have been from some other argument that they had with a friend or a relative or something. But the manosphere is blaming women for self-harm and substance abuse problems. I didn't think that the second half of the video was necessarily that good, if this is the video referenced, if that, coincidentally happens to be. I did think that that I think they were trying to say that women can exacerbate these problems by being unsympathetic, and so having this video that was very non-empathetic again went straight to hypocrisy, and definitely was not what most of us would consider Christian behavior. So the men have a higher rate supposedly of these, especially two afflictions or whatever. Well, we know that women commit more acts of self-harm. It's just that men use more lethal self-sabotaging methods, and so they don't, instead of being seen as a cry for help, they just die. But I think also a lot of these men maybe have jobs and military service and Dear John letters and stuff that might be giving them higher rates of PTSD and such. But then again, this is not a person who would blame, or maybe would blame, sorry, rather, Judy Garland was an alcoholic, and Marilyn Monroe, did he blame men for them because Hollywood was the patriarchy? Yeah, maybe. So I think there's probably some argument going to be half baked in there somewhere. Obviously, I think that, I'm not a Dr. Drew, but I think it's mostly genetics for alcohol problems and depression and such. And I think that these people often have substance abuse and problems too, and they just, explain away their binge drinking while vilifying, this guy's or whatever, because he's less functioning or something. But yes, addicts do have excuses for everything. They blame others for most of their problems. And I don't think that's strictly a man issue. I think that's just pretty common across the board. But I don't know what the solution is, because again, even if you can break them of that, they're still fighting with the mental health issue. But then this one turns around and posts about how they're having mental health issues, which again goes straight to Gutfeld and TDS and talking about how, liberalism and leftism is probably mostly mental health issues. If you're not, getting paid by a foreign country to spout this man-hating philosophy or whatever. But then Alex Grace comes around and says, well, a lot of it might be hive mind mentality with the females. And of course, we see a lot more hive-minded mentality with left-leaning political, because again, like this one, if you attack them too much, they just block you because they don't want to, But then, but I think there can be, legitimate triggers that, feed the behavior along with their excuses for the behavior. Again, I'm not Dr. Drew. I can't unpack that all in a video about dating. wasn't really my plan. We're trying to, again, if you meet someone who has a substance abuse problem, they might not be the person you want to date, but it doesn't mean, you can't care for them. But again, they're, tough love and all that. But again, being insufferable and nagging or whatever doesn't necessarily help either. So I guess sometimes the relationship just has to end even before it can get started or whatever. That's, again, not something you're necessarily going to be able to weed out on a dating app, because the applicants can be liars. So, because they were joking about lying in the last couple videos. But I thought it was a bit of a mischaracterization, probably, of the original message. And pull up by the bootstraps if depressed, blah, 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 was kind of their answer in a previous, I think it was episode 5, where they were trying to be funny. But again, rather than offer a real solution, they just offered this kind of joke at men's expense, which again, I think shows an inherent bias underlying the company ethos of the, employees. So I don't know if the rot's from the bottom to the top or the top to the bottom, because the companies are employing complicit employees. Chicken and the egg. Again, not going to unravel all that, just something to think about. But the logical inconsistency constantly, because none of this is sympathy or empathy for these men or their problems. So how is your message any different or better than the one that you saw that you didn't like, that, again, may or may not have been completely accurate or well presented? Again, I don't try to consume a lot of content that is strictly like anti, one sex over the other or whatever. I think it was possibly, they could have misunderstood something from an Alex Grace video or something similar to that too. Like I said, I don't know. Don't have the source. Don't know exactly what. But then also in episode, 4, I think it was, or 3, or a couple of different ones, that men should be left lonely just because you don't like their politics or you consider them, too creepy to date or whatever, but still has terrible taste in men and ends up in one worse relationship than the other after another. And, obviously a lonely spinster, if you're posting about politics on Mother's Day, chances are you're not in a significant, serious relationship. Yeah. Okay, I said that already. And so now we had a recent episode. I'm in the wrong document. I don't need to read it. I can kind of paraphrase it if I can find it. In short order, but basically saying that they're back to where they were a year and a half ago-ish about having, lost passion for life and daily enjoyment things or whatever. And so, yeah, saying, that they're feeling depressed and pointless again. And so one commenter, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but I think it's a woman, comes in and says, you kind of answered your own question. Basically, he says, keep doing what you're doing, but that's what's been failing you. So why she hearts this, I don't know. Isn't that the literal definition of insanity, is expecting a different result? And again, it's your opinions that you're, feeling null about expressing have mostly been propaganda and man hate spew anyway. So I don't know how many of these fake friends will actually come to your rescue when your dopamine wears off, as I've been saying it would since episode 1 or whatever, from these, shallow or seemingly less shallow pursuits of the hobbies and things that, is it a hobby or is it a side hustle? You kind of got to pick a lane, right? If it's a side hustle, then maybe don't look to it for enjoyment in the same way you would a hobby, because that's not what's going to make it fulfilling or whatever. I did a review on that book about the money and such, episode. Yada, yada, yada. It was pretty recent. 338, episode 338. So that he addresses some of that in that book that might be useful. About having certain hobbies and that sort of thing. Oh, great. Now the screen went to the wrong screen. Why do you want... Okay, there we go. Sorry. So then somebody else says, but yeah, like I said, said this already about the Arcadia mayor, and might be facing 10 years in prison for their beliefs or opinions. The whole Democratic Party is kind of this now, and every day on the 5, that the show that everybody watches, Harold argues that no, most of us are this, and Gutfeld argues, no, you got left behind, bud. You need to find a new party. That party is no longer what you think it is. And it's all TDS and mental illness. And again, these lower tier zealots or whatever still smoke too much dope and drink too many margaritas and want to lecture the rest of us on what we're doing wrong. Then someone says, read a book. I was going to go on a tangent about this because I kind of understand this part of the struggle. You know, you can't just read fluff or fantasy or romance stuff if you're a little too intellectual. You want something that's a little more challenging. You know, but they were saying, oh, do this, you know, until something pointless and mildly enjoyable until that phase wears off. Well, it never wears off because of their TDS and their other, you know, spun in their head stuff. And what they're going to pick to read is going to be more stuff that is this bias, you know, probably more politics, more who knows what. But yeah, I mean, you know, you want to read stuff that's a child. I mean, I think this is why as a child I always liked Charlie Brown, because it did address topics that were a little above my pay grade at that age, you know. But I kind of like Charlie Brown, you know, because he was this kind of like, everybody craps on him, but he doesn't care. He just persists, you know. And, you know, he's determined to do it even if that kite never gets off the ground or whatever. But then it kind of morphed in later years when Snoopy was just talking about cookies all the time. It's like, okay, we already have Garfield. We didn't really need this to lose the plot. So I might do a long episode about Charlie Brown that has nothing to do with the Tinder apps and things. But yeah, I was thinking last night, again, like I said, I'm adding more crap to the front that had nothing to do with the topic. We haven't even gotten to the actual stuff that I was going to read yet. But like growing up, when I was younger, I definitely knew a lot of like Lucy's, and then later he had added Peppermint Patty, and then when I got older, I actually did kind of start meeting more Peppermint Patties, who were maybe not always 100%. You know, you'd butt heads a bit, but it wasn't her just being so aggressive about it, you know. And she would defend you to other people about, you know, no, he's, you know, worthwhile or whatever kind of thing. You know, I definitely had more friends like that than, you know, women with no real, I don't know, personality or point of view or whatever. But of course, the problem with the Peppermint Patty, the Thanksgiving episode, is the one where she's kind of the most prominent. That one, in every earlier one, it's always Lucy accusing, especially the Christmas episode, right? Lucy accusing Charlie Brown of being wishy-washy. And then Peppermint Patty kind of steamrolls him and creates this party out of nowhere that he then has to host and cook for and try and figure out, you know, how to entertain these guests. And he just kind of gives up and walks away, and it's actually Marcy who confronts Peppermint Patty. So we still don't get any real growth from Charlie Brown, unfortunately, in this episode. He gets bailed out by a phone call from Grandma, who tells him to bring them all over to her house, you know. So, yeah, that was kind of not really a character arc if you want to watch my screenwriting content. So yeah, that again, not necessarily dating app stuff, but so then related to this though was a couple of comments from the Alex Grace video. One of them, I forget which one, but probably the most recent one. The Mr. says superiority without responsibility is essentially what women have. And then Wendy says the heart of feminism, which of course the video is addressing more pointedly lately about, you know, feminism has clearly become completely toxic and all that. And this one says, Keith says modern women cannot be fully satisfied. They're on an endless quest for more. Well, yeah, again, because they're mentally ill in many cases, as we discussed in the prior threads and whatnot, which can also lead to their shopping addictions and other things. Like I said, I'm not going to go too much into that here because we already talked about that a bit in episode 6 and even touched on it in episode 5. Then Immortal says that is not a woman, that's an indoctrinated weapon. True. Yeah, exactly. Whether they know it or not, they're definitely not working for the good of the country or the society overall. Again, Alex Grace addresses this more than I will. Astro says privileged to such a degree and spoiled so badly that they think they're oppressed. What a charmed life it must be. Yeah, especially when they have, again, a job that pays them enough that they can reject 80% of men as losers. Again, we talked about that in episode 4, I think, or 5, or 3. So then Caveat says, charmed, yes, but it must also be exhausting going through life saddled with so much anger and delusion. Seems like, because we, again, just have a post from recently where they're exhausted about being fired up by their own rhetoric or something. I don't know. But yeah, if you're too nice to these women, they tell you that you're love bombing them and you're trying to, because they're narcissists and all that too. And if you criticize them, then you're trying to destroy their self-esteem because you're the patriarchy and da-da-da. You can't win. Like I said, more is all tied into that. And no man is ever good enough because you have this box and this box and this box and this box. And if you only check 3 of them, then you're not good enough for them. And then they can't figure out why there's no decent men left when they're 40. Well, because you rejected all the ones who checked 3 or 4 boxes for not having 5 boxes. Might be part of it. Don't know. But yeah, they'd rather vilify a boogeyman than take accountability, all the usual arguments. Like I said, I wanted to get into actual specifics instead of all these generalities, but we're kind of hung up here. Claims men blame women for all their problems. Oh, I already read that. Okay. I don't know any men who typically blame women for all their problems, except for usually those alcoholics. But again, they often have some legitimate gripes buried in there, like she took the house, she took the kids. Whether or not that was because they were an alcoholic and they just won't accept it, again, it can come into play, but often not always, the chicken, the egg, and blah, blah, blah. Because I've met plenty of guys who I wouldn't classify as total alcoholics who had similar issues. There was a bit about some woman. Oh, they seek out this content that annoys them and then post about it and then get no responses. So they're calling this poster who believes in traditional marriage delusional and laughing, 4 laugh emojis. Okay, but it's also delusional to think that masculine behavior and low IQ behavior is appealing to men or whatever. So might be part of the problem. Or again, that hunky billionaire wants to have children with you when you're 50. Again, not too likely. Or if you should even have children with your mental state. Sunday afternoon ranting about other people's posts. Yeah, mad because... oh, I already read all that. Okay. So yeah, not really a productive use of your time necessarily. These days off and times after work. Okay, so we're back to this gal that was in episode 3, I think, where I put all the religion, maybe it was 4, where I put all the religion stuff aside to this episode. So this is where it starts finally. Okay, sorry for that 30-minute introduction. And we're only at page 4, so we're clearly not going to get through all of this. But Tanya again posted something previously that had gotten, lambasted in the comments as if Tanya cared enough to change her behavior. Well, she did not. But Tanya came back and posted, "This is a liberal cesspool of hateful people, this site. Who here is Christian, loves Jesus, and won't be bullied by the woke mob? I hope you find my page, heart." And so Tinder gal comes back with, no, you're getting it all wrong. We hate you specifically. Yes, like Jesus would, right? So yeah, that's the Christian response that the other Christian gets from the woke Christian. Mutual or she's too real. I'm not sure what I meant there. But anyway, but then they come in and said, oh, I love Jesus. This girl is a troll who posts rage bait every day. That's all you actually post. In fact, your rage bait is worse than their rage bait because their rage bait is on brand, I guess, is following along what most people agree is what, whether you like the Bible or not, the Bible does have a lot of parameters in it about how you're supposed to behave in a moral manner. And if you choose that queer theory and feminist theory and whatever else theory is what Jesus was espousing, you're probably missing the mark quite a bit. Yeah, this other woman is too much probably of a real Christian for you to stand. And it's a desperation ploy bull crap after them other two comments, but nobody replied for either or something, or they did later. I don't even think it's a real picture of her. Don't waste your time defending this person who is probably a dude in India. So we're back to that. That was episode, I think, 4 about the foreigners who live in cultures where they have a higher marriage and child birth rate still at least than ours. That's having a big decline because of behavior like this. So Jones comes in and says, what a bunch of hateful, foolish people. It's obvious you don't talk to Jesus, and I feel very sorry for you. Tanya, just keep doing you. It sounds like you're on the right track. Don't let this negativity affect you. I think you're brave for speaking about your faith and principles. Well, the fake Christians will hate you too. But Cheryl comes in and says, another hateful white lib woman speaking hate. That is all you people do. White women should just STFU. Wipe your mouth. There's shh coming out. Yeah. Then this is the comment. Dab says, there's no hate like liberal love. Yeah, or fake Christian love anyway. Hypocrite. Excuse for Christianity love. Brian says, can confirm. I think he's trying to defend Tinder here. Says, can confirm. Also, I checked with Jesus. He says he's never heard of her, meaning Tanya, I believe. But then Arch comes in and says, talking to Jesus, your underpaid Hispanic. Oh, talking to Jesus, your underpaid Hispanic landscaper is not the same as talking to Jesus Christ. But you do you, little dude. I thought that was funny. Save that for another day. There was, again, it went into politics, and I don't want to go there right now. This is more, I mean, like I said, it's kind of related, but we're not totally trying to do that. Now I have to find, oops. Okay, here we were. Leftovers from, what happened? Okay, it went to the right place and then it stopped going to the right place. I did that wrong. Okay. I see what I did wrong. Leftovers from part 6. So that, yeah, some of this was what I bounced over and didn't read yet. But some of the stuff I was going to read again from part 5, I'm still not going to read again because you can just watch part 5. Let's see. Somebody's bored on Saturday afternoon. Let's see. Usually insomniac. Oh, I did read that already. Okay. Okay. This is the part that I read in part 5 that I didn't, that I'm not going to read now. Okay, I came across the same part that I just said I wasn't going to read. Right. So now I got to scroll through this. Hang on a second. How much of this? Yeah, I read that. Okay, divorce. This was the guy about he got dates when he made this much money, and he got dates when he made this much money. Oh, Tanya. Oh, okay. Maybe I read this already, but this is one of the things that Tanya said. I'll restate this. Conservative men get the most beautiful feminine women who aren't woke and delusional. Liberal women know it and are jealous. So they marry the liberal man they can control to feel like they're in charge. See, supposedly this is rage bait. No, she's just stating what she's seen, anecdotally. How much of this is quantifiable, I don't know. Feminism isn't really about equality. It's about rejecting God's design. Well, again, God's design, I guess, is what you make of it. But feminism is definitely not about equality. We have Alex Grace videos about that. It's a political movement and not a healthy one. So then she gave a poop emoji or something. I forget. But that's the kind of stuff that Tanya was putting. So, okay, I think we finally got to the new stuff. So she says, Skip's post about billionaires and AI. Okay. So Tinder gal says, if men can't cook for themselves, can't clean up after themselves, need us to give them lists of how to help us. I'm beginning to realize why God said it's not good for man to be alone and made Eve. Yeah, I don't want to cook. Make me a sandwich, right? Then Modest comes in and says, sounds like you know no men and plenty of boys. Yeah, true. You hang out with simps. You hang out with, again, if you hang out with queers and can't figure out why straight men don't want to date you, there might be a thing there going on. So she says, me looking for clues as to where the men are. And I guess there was a GIF that went along with this. I don't know, whoever. Again, the smart ones knew better than to waste their time with you, and they don't pick up trash, and you're in a blue city in a blue state, so maybe it's not as bad as Manhattan, but you've chased away a lot of the real men to other states already. I'm watching the program, and they're all in Orlando, and the women are throwing themselves at these guys, and I don't even think these guys are that impressive. Apparently, they must have more money than I do. I don't know if I can afford to just pick up and move, but again, and I wouldn't want to date. I don't want to say names because fans of the show might, come at me. But some of them, I would definitely not want to date them anyway. But they're there. They're single. They're whatever. Not that I'm necessarily, like I said, interested in any of the joking. CBR says, 4 laugh emojis. Don't be mad, but I own my own house. I clean my own house, including behind the furniture and dusting. I make my own meals and do my own laundry. So where would that put you? I guess. I guess he's saying he doesn't need her as much as she thinks he should need her. So Tinder gal. Well, normal people look for a spouse for love and companionship. What's wrong with you? I think I had read this in the previous episode or something like this. In episode 4 or 5? Might have been 3 even. I don't remember. Anyway. But again, a hypocrite who, usually always wants to talk about economy and other issues, but again, claims it's not a gold digger, but acts like a gold digger and all that. I think it was episode 3, actually. But also misses his point that he's not incompetent like you're painting the men out to be when, again, you're not finding men who can, feed themselves apparently or something. But you can do these things, but you won't do them for a man. Then what wife qualities do you have? Again, besides masculine behavior, and low IQ stuff like attacking Tanya for having the audacity to post her beliefs that disagree with yours. I don't know if Tanya is married and happy, or she insists Tanya is a bot, so I don't know. Kiev, I can and do everything you have just mentioned. You are definitely not what I want in a relationship. Grow up with your BS. Yeah, she kind of stinks. As like I said in the other episode, I don't know if you could spend 2 hours with her and get anywhere enjoyable. Zant says, the best chefs in the world are men. Maybe pick better men. Yeah. She never ever does. One chat after another, body count in the millions. Not really, but might as well. Chrome says, that God who created everything also created those men. You're in a tragic loop of your own faults. And she's annoying too, right? And possibly insufferable. We don't know. She heart infantilism equals patriarchy. I don't know if that's some post or something. She never met my dad when he was younger. My mom always talks about how much my dad hated his bachelor slob roommates. They wouldn't wash a dish, all that usual pick up your socks kind of shit. Ban says, no, it's because we have other responsibilities that are more tedious and takes time and patience other than cooking. Look at the world you live in. It was built by men, not women. This is where she usually argues that these are foreigners saying this kind of stuff. And there was a long bit about that in episode 5 or 6. I thought I covered this a lot. But yes, has only had, pretty much cushy jobs despite her hardships as a young student, blah, blah, blah. So then she says, men who were raised by women, fed by women, birthed by women, sit your ass all the way down. I don't know what birth matters to you when you don't have any children or whatever. You're still a spinster, but see, this is where the arguments get kind of, off track somewhat. But Ban comes back. He doesn't shy away. Wow, shiver me timbers. Yo stuff. Oh, he's saying she's just a joke. You think what you said is remotely intimidating to get me or anybody else. Ha ha. Yeah, obviously, we're not talking about whether or not women have attributes that men appreciate. Of course they do. We're talking about society as a whole functions because men clean the sewers and make your, grow your food and clean your toilet. That's, just because women have entered the workforce, again, in mostly cushy jobs, doesn't mean that you're willing to serve in the military. You obviously didn't. Doesn't mean that you're willing to, get your hands dirty doing these other things. She says, I'm not intimidating anybody. I'm just telling you to get your head out of your blank where you keep yours, obviously. So you run out of space already. Ban says you're immature and shows your life and lifestyle. You can't accept the truth and want to reverse your mental illness on somebody. Yep, because verified with their own posts. Mental illness on somebody when it does nothing to me, because at the end of the day, when I get off my phone, I have true peace and joy. You can't say the same. Ha ha ha. Literally, she just says that she doesn't even enjoy the crap that she thinks she enjoys. Except for, chasing more chat and posting more hate speech or whatever. Oh, this one we've read before. Jujukin says, what about their fathers? Yeah. There were no men involved in that birth process or that marriage or whatever. There what? Yeah, none of these feminists will admit that men contribute anything to a relationship and then can't figure out why they're not in a good, healthy relationship. And then he says, well, women are told to be helpmates in the Bible. This is a passage that's argued a bunch that I'm not going to go on to that. But she insists it means something other than what these people claim it means, and, whatever. Not interesting to me. Oki says, yes, men don't like repetitive chores. They need helpers. God saw that. But remember, before men marry, they manage those issues. Usually. Well, not all of them, but most of the women won't date the grungy slobs, according to you anyway, because you go to their house and you say it's creepy and you leave, right? Because you're so discerning in your 5 boxes of checks. No, I don't know. So here we got a similar gaslighting accusation. Vike says, I'm just here for the clinical study on theological confirmation bias. The commitment to taking a creation narrative and twisting it into a 21st century household chore grievance is honestly inspiring. It's fascinating to look at how people use ancient texts to validate their current resentment. Yeah, she's totally full of crap for one reason or another. Then Vike comes in some more. Subject number 1031. Imagine thinking that the helpmeet concept was God providing a personal maid service because men can't figure out an air fryer. It's a spectacular case of main character theology. In reality, you reap what you sow. If you date children who need lists, you shouldn't be shocked when you end up feeling like a mother instead of a partner. Highly entertaining, 10 out of 10, no notes. Yes, she's still whining about the ex-husband 15 years later, like we talked about. So she comes back at Vike and says, imagine having no sense of humor. Actually, I thought that was very humorous. It just wasn't your sense of humor. So, of course, you didn't appreciate it. So he comes back, says, subject number 1031. Again, addendum A. The subject has deployed the lack of humor defense, a standard tactical retreat when a theological deep dive is exposed as a basic grievance. Fascinating to see the transition from scripture-backed truth to it was just a prank the moment the logic is scrutinized. The data confirms, the data confirms, the humor wasn't the issue, the consistency is. Still, 10 for 10 for the pivot. 10 out of 10 for the pivot. So she gets a medal then to be full of crap. Olympic event. Sorry, I'm just having fun now. So then Beloved comes in and says, 5 minutes after God made Eve, he made spiders and men had a purpose again. Laugh emoji. So then Jilkin, the level of self-hatred is sad to see. I'm not sure if these are his question marks or mine. I assume that he's feeling sorry for her and not Tanya, but maybe Tanya. I don't know if he read the Tanya bit or not, or if that was a totally different post. I think that was a totally different post. Tinder gal comes back and says, ironically, that's not what irony means, but okay. Ironically, the biggest thing women need men for is to protect us from other men. Also false, totally false statistic. Alex Grace videos up the wazoo. So again, operating from this bullshit propaganda with your argument, because most men, again, is this many men will actually, harm women, and you want to say it's all men. Not even close, because it's other men who do protect you from those few bad men. Lucky you that they want that job that you don't do, that you vilify them for, and probably were screaming defund the police 5 years ago. So then Chris says, thanks to men previously making the world safer from other threats. Yeah, careful. She's allergic to facts. Watch it. She'll come back at you with something. Post dumb gif of woman says it goes over her head, meaning she knows she's stupid or thinks you are. Yeah, I don't know. This is out of sequence. Chris says, no, I get what you're trying to say. I'm just pointing out that there are much more dangerous things that aren't really a danger anymore, thanks to men, right? Like bears. You can go live in the woods with your bears now because most of the bears can't get you or something. I'm joking. So then she comes back. Sure, okay, thumbs up. Want a cookie? We gave birth to and nurtured everyone. No, you didn't. You don't have any children. Your mom gave birth to you and might regret it when you argue with her about religion and other stuff. Trophy. Here's the trophy for us doing the basics of a human contract. Again, men are part of that contract, whether you've dated any or not. qualify. Yeah, let's see, provide nothing to human race but desk jockey job and lame community theater and these posts. Annoying sanctimony and condescension from misogynist feminine who has no husband, no family, and no real leg for standing on in this vein. He's talking about all men through history more a bit, but you missed the point as usual. Yeah, because these women did all this birthing without sperm and men and such. No, humans aren't deer. We don't, mate and then fly off into the woods most of the time to, only show up again next autumn. Memphis says, how about drilling your own oil for your electricity and vehicle? Who built the home you live in? Who picks up your trash? Yeah, again, you're trying to argue facts with a lunatic. So she comes back. Are you aware what a joke is? So once again, the pivot back to humor. Like I said, this might be out of order from when the other guy came in. I don't pretend that I got this all in the correct. 3 laugh emojis. It's called humor. No, it's not. It's not actually humor. It's hate speech disguised as your idea of humor. And it's a pivot because you lose the argument when, again, we boil it down to actual facts. Quit taking everything so seriously. Oh, yes, because misogyny was beneath ye or whatever. So then Memphis says, sorry, it was so funny I forgot to laugh with a wide eye emoji. I have to practice that one. That'll be a good thumbnail for somebody's rebuttal video if they ever make one. I'm almost at an hour already, and we're at page 15, so we're getting there. We're getting there. I don't know how much more, but so then she says it's humor for women. Move along. Okay, stupid alcoholic divorced women who otherwise have no sense of humor, maybe, or sexist feminists who. Have no taste in brains, because none of the ones with taste in brains seem to think it's funny. They want to, again, like Tanya, marry men and have nice relationships. And you have your simp men maybe who think that you are amusing, but none of the regular ones. Let's see. Oh, so this is what it says. Last week, misogyny was beneath you. But now it's all misogyny. Okay, like I said, this was reading stuff out of order. Any women stupid enough to listen to her will be single and miserable too, forever, spinsters. Yeah, again, other videos have covered all that. Unless they've roped a real loser, simp, or whatever. Memphis says, yeah, nothing funny will be said. Gladly. Well, yeah, probably never by her. So I don't know. He's smarter than me. Bullet dodged, whatever. Because I still read some of this. Well, most of this is from months ago, but like I said, I'm just finally getting to reading it now. Beloved, but I don't weigh in on most of this stuff again. I just believe that we, again, should see this behavior for what it is. The company and this, even though they'll disavow, this is what you're getting from your dating apps, people. So then Beloved says, in any instance where that's true, I aim to be on the protecting side, but I'm not sure men are the biggest threat. I've seen how women treat other women. Yeah, again, Alex Grace videos up the wazoo. The guy got killed in the bar just the other day, trying to break up a fight between 2 women. In San Pedro, I believe it was. He's got another similar face emoji there. There was also a BBC video about they had separated 2 groups of kids into houses, one of all girls and one of all boys. And at first, the boy house was kind of chaos, but soon enough, they arranged kind of a hierarchy, and it fixed itself. The girl house went insane. We had 2 or 3 of them that wanted to commit suicide by like week 2. So yeah, again, watch some Alex Grace videos before you spout this nonsense. But of course, most of this nonsense is from, I don't know, January or before. So she says, if men can't cook for themselves, can't clean up for themselves, can't clean up after themselves, need us. Well, again, I'm going to let the comments. Solo comes in here and says, the most famous cooks in the world are men. Oh, so this was slightly out of order from that other thread. Maybe. Men also cook and clean prior to having a girl, so your point is off and biased. She says triggered, which I guess is a joke. I was looking for a long bit that I never found or something. Solo says speaking facts equals triggered. Well, yeah, always. Again, that's the whole libtard ethos. They're allergic to facts. And then try to gaslight the rest of us into believing that we're the ones who are ignoring the facts when they find some weird outlier thing that supposedly reaffirms their entire stance on some ridiculous thing. Okay, so then she says, women have done most of the cooking since the dawn of mankind. Okay, great. But who brought them the stuff to cook? Again, you wouldn't have anything to cook if they didn't bring you a buffalo, okay? There are plenty of superstar woman cooks. Martha, I'm not going to read all this. It's a list of names, okay? I guess you live under a rock. That's you. Points down. And then there's a SpongeBob gif because, again, she's infantile with her responses. Again, nobody said women can't cook. We want you to cook. These male chefs supposedly dominate more than these names that you mentioned, you know, in the actual work sphere. These are the few that made it onto TV. So again, you're missing the actual statistic if you bothered to do a little actual math. So then Solo comes back and says, being first and being the best is not the same thing, LOL. Agree. Who was that fat chef that used to be the guy with the beard? I forget. Anyway, he was the one I used to always see when I was younger. And I wasn't even interested in food, but he looked like Pavarotti or whatever. Or Dom DeLuise. Every time I have watched those chef shows, it's mostly men as the judges. I also wrote a paper on this before because it actually surprised me that over 70% of all the top chefs in Michelin star restaurants are men. Yeah, and not all gay, like fashion and other industries, right? But that's also a lot more men than women now, too, I think, in the fashion industry. Because I just did the video about Devil Wears Prada, and I didn't really go into that at all. But if you're interested, that was episode number 30 in my screenwriting playlist instead of the normal menswear playlist that this ends up in. Then she says, cool story, dork. Women have still been feeding y'all from birth to death for thousands of years. Again, who are you feeding? You're not married. You haven't fed me. Well, same as Bernie Sanders hasn't cut me a check yet for all the student loan and other stuff he keeps insisting that we're supposed to get. He buys another mansion and doesn't send me any money. Why are you obsessed with me? Okay, you're a narcissist. They're not obsessed with you. You wish they were obsessed with you. But that's another story for another day. Solo comes back. You can Google it very easily. Why would I lie? And I thought we were just having a conversation. Please don't call me that only my friends. Please don't call me that only my friends are allowed. Oh, dork. You're not supposed to call him dork, right? I guess he checks out now when we get Swift Moon. Says God makes Adam. 5 minutes later, God, ooh, yeah, that one is going to need supervision. So apparently men can't look after themselves is the joke. But then Jilkin comes back and says, then how come God literally told Eve that Adam shall rule over her? Yeah, because they try to cherry pick stuff while claims others do too, only, or whatever. More gaslighting. Then Big Dad says, because if he made Eve first, she wouldn't have asked for a partner. 3 laugh emojis, more feminism. And of course, she hearts this because she's worthless and sexist. And her whole stance is that she should be promiscuous and has no consequences for that, of course. So then Jilkin comes back and says, Adam didn't ask for one either. And why would you assume that Eve would want to be alone? Yeah, the first thing Eve does is want to play with his junk, right? That's like first thing off the bat is the serpent story. And then blames the serpent, so no accountability from the get-go from that whore either. Okay, Eve is not a literal, whore. I'm being whatever. So then Tinder gal with 4 laugh emojis says flashbacks to boys growing up who would jump off high things and break their legs. I used to jump off things all the time. I never broke my legs. I guess you knew dumber boys or braver ones. Well, the little girls never get hurt because we were dumb adrenaline junkies. I've known plenty of adrenaline junkie females, actually. More than a lot of guys, I would say. Most of the guys I know are very pragmatic about their risk aversion tactics and strategies and blah, 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 and still end up sheriffs and firemen and soldiers and the Navy and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, on a personal note, I wanted to be a stuntman when I was young. I was made out of rubber until I was almost 19 and finally sprained an ankle. So take that for what it is. And that was only because I was trying to play touch football wearing Vans sneakers without socks. So my foot slipped inside the actual sneaker. So that was dumb, but we weren't playing like a serious game. So oops. It wasn't because I jumped off the roof, which I had done many, many, many times prior to that, or jumped out of trees, and then somewhere this got disconnected. Can't you take a joke? Loosen up. So always again trying to say everything's a joke, even though. Then somewhere in there, there's a dog reference, maybe. I would have asked for domesticated wolves to do my hunting and protection and companionship for me. And then she puts heart eye emojis. Yeah, well, dogs don't hunt in the same way that you're thinking. And you'd still have to, I don't know, be able to carry things. So, whatever, go date bears then, sex with them next, for all we care, Then Big Dad comes back and you'd be better off. Laugh emoji. She hearts again, then I guess thinking that he's actually agreeing with her when he's probably making fun of her. Yeah, stop dating Chads already then. You don't have to date for free dinners. You don't have to date for validation. Go be alone and nobody cares. You don't have to post about it all day. Again, insisting that Tanya's the one who does all that when you're the one who does it constantly. Nobody's stopping you from being alone and lonely whilst you insist that it's the men that have the problem. Again, all the smart ones ran away and married somebody else 10 years ago. And again, you can't satisfy this because they just insist that they have it all figured out and they're the perfect woman. All right, okay, well, if you're that perfect, then hunky billionaires should be lining up anytime now. Yeah, boy says, and in exchange, most of us get a useless bill and a headache added to our long list of annoyances. Yeah, she still wants a free dinner and claims otherwise. We know. NN says, I haven't had a woman yet that can actually cook. Yeah, me neither. Well, I kind of had one. I had one that wanted to cook for me, but then she was a vegetarian, and it was just this like soggy couscous, which is kind of like maggoty rice. It was absolutely disgusting. I don't know what that was supposed to do. We didn't really have a second date after that. SVB says, it sounds like women saying this can't even clean up after themselves. Yeah, she has a maid. We know that from episode 2 or 3, I think. I forget, but when she talks about her expensive perfumes. I think it was episode 3. Then she says to SVB, maybe that's a you thing. No, the women now are definitely not really domestic. Now they stink at those chores because feminists raised them, and now they just give each other terrible dating advice and end up single, and after dating only the wrong men, and they go to catered college and live on fast food or the guy's money for meals, because again, gold digging is still a career strategy more than a dating strategy. But this one had, supposedly traditional faith through high school time instead. So how she ended up so cockeyed, we don't entirely know. Another lonely Sunday done shopping batch here. So we're at over an hour, but we're at page 18, people. We're getting there. Get Dizzy says, Claudia. Oh, sorry. I'm reading the wrong part. This is what a lot of women in their 20s and 30s don't realize. They're being encouraged to keep going back to school to get 176 degrees, party, have a bunch of ladies' nights and girls' trips. And just like that, you're 55 years old and realize you didn't take the good men that you met seriously, or you thought they were beneath you financially, or because you just wanted to have fun with bad boys. Yeah, sorry if this gets redundant when they say the truth here. And you can't press rewind. Consequences. You didn't take your prime serious enough. And she had excuses for this back in episode 6 and maybe 5. I forget. Shows there was a GIF, I guess, or a photo. Claudia Jordan missed out on great men thinking didn't need to settle down younger. I don't know who that is. Then Jemmy says, serious question. Do you really think there were a bunch of men between 20 to 30-year-olds looking to get married? Yeah, I do. But they all got friend-zoned or called creeps, like I said before. The ones that weren't, married to their high school or college sweetheart already. Not all 20-year-old men or 20 to 30-year-old men are, as promiscuous as these women are now, because it's harder for them to meet women and be promiscuous. Because the women all give them the ick factor if they don't check 12 boxes and they don't do this and they don't do that. Like, what's his name just said in a long post. Shelley says, and that's it right there. A majority of men in their 20s and 30s are not looking to be married. Well, okay, I don't know about a majority. Again, we'd have to have actual stats and how that's skewed. I think a lot more of them want to be married that can't find a woman who isn't batshit crazy, or super immature. They wait until they're older and then don't want the women that are their own damn age. Yeah, how dare they want a younger, prettier one? Right. I actually wanted to be married several times when I was that age. And I won't go into all that now. But then Tinder Gal says, and then it's on us for not trying to get with older men when we were young. 3 weird face emojis. I'm sure you met at least one older man when you were younger that liked you more than the younger men, I guess. But liar, hypocrite, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The usual. Traditionally, most younger women, though, do like older men. Obviously the ages have skewed in more modern times. And obviously in Alex Gray's video, he talks about how, the farm guy and the farm girl grow up and kind of end up. I don't think it was always a one-to-one so much as that dynamic, because, supposedly in the Bible, Joseph is 3 times Mary's age or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Again, we'd have to have actual quantification, because what we see in the aristocracy isn't going to be the same thing necessarily we see in the peasant classes, blah, 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 blah. I'm not a historical expert on the entire history of dating in mankind. But when I was growing up, a lot of the, high school girls wanted to date college dudes. And then I met a guy, 10 years ago or whatever, who said, oh, those were the creeps. No, you're seeing them as creeps now. Back then it was totally what was done, and then the college girls wanted to date the guys who had real jobs, because the guys in college didn't have any money. They were sitting around, maybe we can get beer this weekend, I don't remember my college. I went to hippie art school. There was hardly any normal relationships at all. people would complain that what's their butt was not interested in a relationship because they were too busy with their studies or da-da-da-da. One gal I knew dropped out to go back to her ex-boyfriend because she thought I wasn't interested enough in her, but she joined a sorority and all they did was go out drinking all the time with all the sorority gals. So it's not like we were dating. It's like, well, you'd rather be doing that than hanging out with me. So no, I guess I'm not that interested in you, in, as much as you'd like romantically. You have my number. Chances are I'm in my room and pining for the other gal who dropped out, actually more than you, but that's another story. Because after Christmas, she left and this girl came. And so I met the one right around the same time as the other one left. And so we hung out for one whole quarter before she left too. So that was a waste of a year, pretty much. Just throwing that out there for no reason. Anyway, Tinder gal comes back. This might be out of sequence again. More delusional, insufferable. Truth is that these women are always looking for Mr. Right. And during all these years, we just find a bunch of shitty D-bags who are not committal or otherwise lame. Again, that's not a man problem. That's a you problem. You're trying to blame the men for your own choices. I don't know why y'all assume it's all our fault, because it is, or most of it, more than you're willing to admit or accept, and that we aren't looking, or you weren't looking, I guess you should have said, in that age, because you're not that age anymore. No, you wanted the Chads to be Mr. Right because they were, more handsome or had more money or whatever. And it turned out to be the same liar F-tard as you are. You're just as shallow and crap as they are, no matter how much you try to backpedal. Same as that other woman, wherever she was, Shelley. And how many had, again, you chased away just the one with ultimatums. Her own personal dating history. We don't have names and dates and photos for all of them. We only have anecdotes for some of them. So one that she claims is the one who got away, but it sounds like he gave her the slip and just made an excuse that made her feel like she was dumping him or something. I'm not entirely positive how it all played out. But it sounds like he knew he'd find something better if he just chased the job and made the money and left the state for good. And hasn't come back, right? Yeah, he knows you're bipolar and your body count is high, even back then probably. Or other issue in the last 10 or 15 years or whenever that guy came along. But she always has an excuse, always plays the victim, etc., etc. You can give them all the gifts you want. They don't appreciate it. Again, like the guy was saying, more is all they want. Nothing's ever good enough, blah, blah. Immune says, it's better to be alone and thriving than struggling with a man. Again, nobody's stopping you from being alone. Go be a spinster, loon, loser all you want. Why are you posting about it? Again, because you're trying to recruit other feminists to your lame cause that is, according to Bill Maher, losing steam as he screams at these people weekly and gets nowhere, and others. Get Dizzy says again, that's not what the Bible says. Y'all are moving out of order. Scared of struggle? That's why a man and woman are supposed to be a team. Many of y'all are selfish now. Yeah, again. So then Tinder gal comes back. Where in the Bible does it tell me I need to date a man with no career or prospects? Again, no mention of love or romance. Same as previous episode. This is the usual default that I talked about extensively in episode 2 and 3, I think. It's always, back to finance. Well, again, these women took away the career options for a lot of these men who then, have to take more demanding jobs than they ever will have to, yada, yada, yada. But it's all his fault, blah, 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 because he didn't pull himself up by his bootstraps, which he then says is a toxic strategy, even though it's the one she offers, blah, blah, blah. So you wouldn't want to date like Jesus, who had no job and just wanders around and says, Buddha will provide, right? You slept with half of California already or something, but none of them wanted to marry you. But the common denominator can't be YOU. No, that couldn't possibly be the problem. The problem is all these guys are lazy slobs. They can't even pick up their own socks. Okay. We're really, really, really getting... more fake validating after pick me up chat in politics, blah, blah, blah. Okay, smart, sane men will stay away for sure. It's more of the same stuff. Dopehead, druggy, I don't know. Anna, oh, this was a woman, I think. One of my clients went on 300 first dates. She got married last year and now she's pregnant. She dedicated an entire year just to dating. That's how she met, excuse me, and that's how she met her man. Like dating was her full-time job, and then a blush emoji or something. So Tinder gal says, that sounds exhausting. I guess I'm just staying single. Yeah, again, nobody's stopping you. We don't know anything about Anna's client, though. What was her age? How attractive was she? How many guys dumped her when they found out how many other men she was dating? Because she sounds like a total serial dater out of context. Even though, again, she wants to get married and wants to have a family and supposedly has succeeded at that. And I guess that was Anna's doing somehow. You matched her with 300 men or something. How many in a year? I don't know. Again, we don't have enough to go on there. But again, Tinder gal's reply to that is saying that she doesn't want to be a serial dater, but then probably still is, because seems to date, again, for validation and free dinners. So then this might be from that thread or not. No, it seems to be from a different day, so out of order, some junk. Masculine says feminism failed women and destroyed families. Oh, so just a statement of fact, yes. And then okay, this might have gotten read sooner, or maybe I meant to read it and didn't in the previous episode that I said earlier that I read. That if you're made it this far, okay, cleaning up the town says based in India, a country with major crimes against women. Well, you leftists have committed major crimes too already, as far as I can tell, but they're supposedly responsible for their whole country now too. How does that work? You're responsible for 304s getting inspired by your rants, I suppose, and possibly other. No, okay. I don't think it matters where it comes from when it's true. Feminism is a cancer. Again, go watch some Alex Grace videos and he can fill you in better than I can. So let's see. She feels like being cheated on by Chad now. Whole place stinks. I don't know. Oh, this is about Los Angeles. I'm not sure who originally posted this, but this is more response, reply stuff. Out of order. We're at the end of the document, so stuff's kind of mangled, but I'm just going to finish it since we're almost to the end. Even though this is running longer than I wanted. Stanzy says, there seems to be a disturbing amount of corrupt non-monogamy in LA. Yes. And then she agrees with that. Yep. 3 laugh emojis. Because again, she insists that she actually wants a real marriage, but not a traditional marriage. She wants a different kind of marriage where she's reclassified what gender roles mean or something. That's not how it works. That's exactly what I talked about in the last 2 episodes. So then Sheriff says, in general, 48% of female population are projected to be single by 2028. Better get it together, women, because guys aren't really trying anymore, and that's a fact. You've exhausted men's options. Then the reply is, choosing better equals choosing no one. Shrugs. Well, only because of what you attract. Again, you're the pathetic spinster. Do you want to be alone? Be my guest. Nobody's stopping you. Yeah. See, Chunks About was posting and therefore thinking about her ex, toxic codependency. books with lame titles. I may have read this already. I don't remember. About how, oh, there was some bit about the women, the Democrat women devolve and look less attractive. Again, same as what Tanya had posted more recently than this. Edward, what has gone wrong, ladies? Why are you worse than our ancestor despite more access to food, health, and wealth? Because they're druggies and alcoholics. So then he says, wrong ideology and brainwashed by parasitic media, perhaps? Well, that contributing factor, but their actual physical behavior is, you know, not because the news is telling them necessarily to be wake and bake or whatever. It's not your fault to be in the situation you are in, but it's your responsibility to wake up to the reality and get healthy again. Okay, so then Tinder Gal just says, make him lonelier. So that was what I was talking about a lot in episode 4 and 5, I think. And it's gaslighting that he is lonely to begin with. You don't know anything about this poster. He might be married and happy and definitely probably better off lonely, even if he is, than with someone like you. And, you know, again, you act superior because of your job, and money is about all that you have really going for you. And maybe your looks, but in the previous video, other people had attacked her looks, which again, I maintain is not what is necessarily constructive here, because either way you parse it, there's less attractive women that are already married and happy, and their men don't mind that they gained 300 pounds when they had their 4 kids or whatever. So this was another night with no date, apparently, probably a Friday. Where's your children? Where's your family? Nope, just masculine energy here that you insist is not masculine energy. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, so we made it to the end somehow. I don't know how. And we didn't cover everything exactly, but we got pretty far. So that's a miracle. I can kind of wrap this up. The usual ending I always say is, you know, boycott Tinder, but since this whole video is technically boycott Tinder, I don't really have to go into that. I do need to fix. Oh, sorry, my stomach is growling because I talked too long. The other thing, I did enable the buy me a coffee feature. If you're feeling like you owe me a pizza or something for running my mouth for almost an hour and a half. One could only hope. Who's going to sit through this far of this? I don't know. I think there was some interesting stuff in it, though. I stand by my content for one reason or another. You know, what can be improved in society? What can be changed? What can be this and that? I don't know. Pull the chain that makes it rain. Blah blah blah. Okay, signing off.